Margaret had only two reasons to keep going: her son, Festus, and her daughter, Linda. Their father walked out on them when they were still small, leaving Margaret with nothing but a broken heart and a strong promise. My children will not suffer because of me. Every morning, long before the sun rose, Margaret went out to look for whatever work she could find. She washed clothes for people. She scrubbed their plates until her back hurt. Some days, she followed builders at construction sites and helped them carry heavy bricks. They paid her only a small amount, but she accepted it with a weak smile because every little coin helped her feed Festus and Linda. Many nights, she had only one small meal. Margaret would push the food toward her children and say, "Eat, my darlings, I'm fine." She watched Festus and Linda eat with joy, even though hunger burned in her own stomach. When they slept, she sat quietly in the dark, pressing her empty belly and trying not to cry out loud. Her neighbors insulted her. They mocked her because she could not pay her bills. Some called her a failure. Others whispered that her children would never amount to anything. Margaret heard every word, but she swallowed the pain and kept going. She carried her hurt deep inside, where no one could see it. At night, after the house was quiet, Margaret knelt beside the old mattress where her children slept. Tears fell from her eyes as she prayed. "God, please help me. Don't let Festus and Linda grow up in this kind of suffering. Give them a better life. Give me strength to keep fighting for them." She cried almost every night, but every morning, she stood up again, wiped her face, and stepped out to continue the hard struggle for her children. Her world was full of pain, but her love for Festus and Linda made her stronger than anyone could ever imagine. There was a time things became even worse for Margaret. She had no money at all, not even enough to pay for a small room. The landlord threw them out. That night, she sat with Festus and Linda in front of a small kiosk. The sky was dark and heavy. When the rain came, it poured on them without mercy. Margaret held both children close, covering them with her wrapper. The cold breeze beat against their skin. Linda shivered in her arms. Festus pressed his face into her shoulder. Margaret whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," over and over as the rain soaked them completely. By morning, Linda was burning with fever. Her tiny body was hot, and her breath was weak. Margaret panicked. She rushed Linda to the nearest hospital, but when they told her the bill, her heart broke. She had nothing, not even a coin. "Please, help my child," she begged the nurse, tears rolling down her face. They gave her medicine on credit because they had seen her struggle before. She thanked them, but she still had nothing to give Linda to eat. The medicine needed food. So Margaret went from house to house, knocking on doors, begging for something, anything, so her daughter could take the drugs. Some people turned her away. Some insulted her, but she kept walking because Linda's life depended on her. At one house, a woman tossed her leftover food and said, "Take it and go. Don't come back here begging." Margaret picked it up quietly, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. She didn't care about the insults. She just wanted Linda to live. She went back to the kiosk where they slept and fed her daughter. She held Linda close while tears ran down her face, tears of fear, tears of shame, and tears of a mother who had reached her breaking point. But even in that moment, with swollen eyes and a broken heart, Margaret said, "Festus, Linda, I will not give up on you, no matter what." Her strength came from her suffering. Her hope came from her children, and her love was the only thing keeping her on her feet. In the middle of all these suffering, there was one prayer Margaret prayed every single day. Whether she was hungry, tired, or in tears, she always whispered the same words: "God, don't let my children suffer." She said it while washing clothes. She said it while carrying bricks. She said it while begging for food. She said it even when her voice was weak from crying. One hot afternoon, Margaret sat in front of a big building. The sun was harsh. Festus sat beside her, looking worried, and little Linda was lying on her lap, still weak from her sickness. Margaret wiped sweat from her face and held her children tight, not knowing what else to do. Just then, the gate opened. A woman drove out in a nice car, but she slowed down when she saw Margaret and the children sitting on the ground. The woman stepped out of the car and walked toward them. "Who are you looking for?" the woman asked gently. "Why are you sitting under this hot sun with children?" Margaret tried to speak, but her voice cracked. We have nowhere to go," she said, tears slowly rolling down her cheeks. The woman knelt beside her. "What happened?" Margaret explained everything, how they had been thrown out, how Linda fell sick, how she worked day and night, how she begged for food, how she prayed not for herself but for her children. The woman listened, her eyes softening with pity and surprise. She looked at Festus and Linda, then back at Margaret. "Get up," the woman said. "Bring your children. You cannot stay out here like this." Margaret looked at her in shock. "Ma." "Yes," the woman replied firmly. "Come inside. You and your children need help." Margaret held Festus' hand, carried Linda, and slowly followed the woman into the compound. For the first time in a long time, she felt a small light of hope. Inside the compound, the woman gave them water to drink and something small to eat. Margaret watched her children eat with shaky hands, feeling a deep relief she had not felt in years. But as she wiped her tears, her face suddenly fell again. The woman noticed the sadness. "What is it?" the woman asked softly. "Why do you look worried again?" Margaret bent her head. "Ma, when we leave here today, we don't know where else to go. We don't have a place to sleep tonight." The woman looked at her for a long moment, then said, "Don't worry. My husband will be back soon. I will talk to him." Margaret nodded slowly, her hands shaking. She didn't know what to expect. All she could do was pray silently. When the woman's husband returned and she explained everything to him, he listened carefully. He looked at Margaret and her children, then looked at his wife. After a short talk, they both called Margaret inside. "You can stay," the man said kindly. "You and your children will live in the boys' quarters. You will work for us, and we will take care of you." Margaret fell to her knees again, crying. She held Festus and Linda close, unable to speak. But the man wasn't done. He looked at Festus and Linda, then said something that shook Margaret's heart. "As long as you live here and work for us, we will send your children to school," he said. "Not just primary school. They will go until they finish university." Margaret broke down completely. She cried loudly, her tears dropping on the floor. "Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ma. God bless you," she said in a trembling voice. "God bless your children the way you have blessed mine." For the first time in a very long time, she felt hope rising in her chest, real hope. And that day became the beginning of a new life for Margaret, Festus, and little Linda. Margaret started working in their house, and before long, everyone grew to love her. The couple's children treated her with kindness and respect. They would laugh with her, help her sometimes, and always greet Festus and Linda like younger siblings. It felt like a real family. Margaret's own children were doing well too. Now that they were in school, they looked healthier, happier, and more confident. Their teachers always sent good reports home. Festus was doing great in math, and Linda loved reading. Margaret would hold their report cards with shaking hands, tears of joy in her eyes. God had remembered her, she thought. The whole house was full of excitement. They were planning the birthday party of the couple's first daughter, who was turning 30. Clothes were picked, shoes were chosen, decorations were discussed. Everyone was talking about how wonderful the celebration would be. Even Festus and Linda were excited. They had never seen such a big birthday party before. One sunny afternoon, as Margaret was arranging the dining table, the gate opened and a fancy car drove in. "That must be my friend," the madam said. "She just came back from the United States." A stylish woman stepped out, smiling widely. Margaret quickly went to greet her with respect. "Welcome, Ma," she said softly. "Let me serve you something to eat." The visitor watched her for a moment, then nodded approvingly. Margaret served food and drinks with her usual gentle manner. After they finished talking and laughing, the woman from the US reached into her bag and pulled out a small velvet box. "I brought you something from America," she said, handing it to her friend. The madam opened it and gasped. Inside was a pair of sparkling diamond earrings, shining like ice under the light. "Oh my God!" the madam shouted with joy. "These are beautiful!" She hugged her friend happily. The whole sitting room was filled with laughter and excitement. Margaret stood quietly in the corner, smiling. She was happy seeing joy around her. She didn't know that this moment, this simple visit, would soon turn her life in a direction she never imagined. Everyone in the house was ready for the party. Even Margaret had bought a simple but beautiful dress. Every night she hung it neatly by her bed and stared at it with a smile. "I cannot wait to look beautiful that day," she always whispered to herself, touching the fabric with joy. Festus and Linda were excited too. They helped in the kitchen, helped decorate, and kept talking about how big the party would be. Finally, the birthday morning came. The house was full of noise, music, and movement. Everyone was dressing up. The decorator was arranging flowers, the cooks were busy, and guests were already sending messages that they were on their way. Madam was in her room, already wearing her lovely dress and shoes. Her makeup was perfect. She smiled at herself in the mirror, then walked to her jewelry box to take the diamond earrings her friend had brought from America. But when she opened the box, the earrings were gone. She froze. She checked again. She pulled out every small tray, every corner. Nothing. Her voice burst out in a loud scream. "Who took my diamond earrings?" Everyone in the house rushed to her room. The husband, the grown children, the workers, everybody. They all looked around, shocked. "I didn't take it," one of the sons said. "I have not even touched your box," the husband added. "I don't know anything about this," the other daughter said. Everyone denied it. Everyone looked confused. Madam's face changed. She became angry, very angry. And then, she slowly turned her eyes to Margaret. "You," she said sharply, "you were the only one there when my friend gave me the earrings." The whole room became silent. Everyone looked at Margaret. Margaret's heart dropped. Her hands began to shake. Her lips trembled. She could not believe what she was hearing. She stared at Madam with tears already gathering in her eyes. Margaret fell on her knees, her voice shaking as she cried, "Ma, I didn't take your diamond earrings. Please believe me. I would never steal from you." But Madam's face was hard. She didn't want to hear anything. Festus and Linda stood beside their mother, crying loudly. They kept saying, "Mummy didn't take anything. Please don't send us away." But Madam refused to listen. "Get out," she shouted. "I will not allow thieves in my house." Her husband tried to calm her. "Let's search again," he said. "Let's check everywhere." But she pushed his hand away. "No, let them leave my house today." With tears pouring down their faces, Margaret picked up the little bags she had. She held her children close as they walked out of the compound. They cried until their voices became weak. The road felt longer than ever. People stared at them. The sun was hot, their feet were tired, and their hearts were broken. They had nowhere else to go. They went back to the street. That night, Margaret could not sleep. She sat under a tree, holding Festus and Linda to her chest as they slept. Her tears dropped on their hair. "God, why?" she whispered. "You know I didn't take anything." The next morning, Margaret gathered courage and called Madam's husband. Her voice was shaking as she explained everything. "Sir, I did not take the diamond earrings. I don't know anything about it. Please believe me." The man sighed deeply. "If you truly did not take it," he said, "the truth will surely come out. Don't worry." Then he surprised her. "I will not stop paying your children's school fees," he said. "They will continue their education. But don't let my wife know about it. She is still angry." Margaret covered her mouth as tears dropped from her eyes, this time tears of relief. The man continued, "I am sending you some money. Get a small apartment for yourself and your children. At least you won't sleep outside again." When Margaret ended the call, she cried again, crying from pain, from shame, and from gratitude all at once. Festus and Linda hugged her tightly. Life had thrown her to the ground again, but God had quietly opened another small door for her. One afternoon, Margaret's phone rang. It was Madame's husband. Her heart started beating fast. She picked the call quickly. "Sir, good afternoon," she said in a trembling voice. The man sighed on the other end. "Margaret, we later found out who stole the earrings." Margaret held her breath. Who was it, sir?" "It was my wife's son," he said quietly. "He took the earrings to impress a girl. We found them hidden in his room." Margaret's mouth hung open. She was shocked. Her hands shook. Tears filled her eyes. All the pain she went through flashed in her mind. She whispered, So it wasn't me." "No, it wasn't you," the man said softly. "I am sorry this happened." Margaret waited. She waited for the words she longed to hear. "My wife wants to apologize. She feels bad. She is sorry she sent you away." But the call ended, and none of those words came. Madame never called. She never apologized. She never said she found the earrings. Not even once. After that day, her husband also began avoiding Margaret. He stopped picking her calls. He didn't send any more support. He didn't keep to his promise. Margaret stood alone again. She wiped her tears and told herself, "I must take care of my children, no matter what." She picked herself up and worked even harder. She washed more clothes, carried loads, cleaned houses, anything just to make sure her children continued their education. Festus and Linda saw their mother's struggle. They read harder, studied day and night, and made her proud. Years passed. Festus finished studying engineering. Linda finished studying law. On their graduation day, Margaret wore her best native dress, her smile bright like the sun. She held her head high as she watched her children walk on stage to receive their certificates. She clapped with tears streaming down her cheeks. People around her turned to look, wondering why she was crying so much. But they didn't know her story. They didn't know her battles. They didn't know the nights she slept hungry, the days she walked barefoot, the insults she endured, the times she cried under the rain with her children. They didn't know that this moment, this proud moment, was her reward. After graduation, both Festus and Linda got good jobs with good salaries. For the first time in many years, the weight on Margaret's shoulders began to fall off. But her story was not over yet. A few days later, just as the sun was setting, Margaret heard a soft knock on her door. She wiped her hands on her wrapper and opened it slowly. When she saw who was standing there, her heart almost stopped. Madame was at the door with her husband beside her. Her eyes were swollen and red, her face pale, and her hands shaking. She looked nothing like the proud, confident woman Margaret once worked for. Behind her stood silence, heavy, painful silence. Before Margaret could say a word, Madame fell to her knees on the ground. "Margaret, please, forgive me," she cried, her voice breaking. "I wronged you. I accused you wrongly. I pushed you and your children out like you were nothing. I refused to believe you. I refused to even think I might be wrong." Margaret stood there, shocked. Her heart beat fast as the memories rushed back, the insults, the hunger, the fear, the night she slept in front of a kiosk, the day she and her children were thrown out like trash. Her eyes filled with tears. Madame continued, crying even harder. "The earrings. It was my son. He stole them. And now," she covered her face with both hands, "now he has been arrested for stealing again. He took money from his company. They caught him. He has been taken to prison, and there is nothing we can do." Margaret gasped softly. She felt a mixture of shock and sadness, not joy, not revenge, just a painful truth that life had come full circle. Madame reached for Margaret's feet, but her husband gently pulled her up. "Margaret," he said quietly, "our son's actions have brought shame to our family, and we know we wronged you deeply. You suffered because of us. We judged you. We rejected you. We broke you. Please, Forgive us. Margaret finally spoke, her voice low and full of emotion. I suffered, yes. I cried many nights. I begged God to help me. I stayed under rain with my children. I went hungry, and when you sent me away, I was heartbroken. I never thought I would survive that pain. But she wiped her tears. God lifted me. God helped my children. Look at them now. Festus and Linda stepped out, both wearing neat clothes from work. They had returned early when they heard voices. Festus placed his hand on his mother's shoulder. Linda stood beside her, strong and calm like a true lawyer. We are who we are because of her, Linda said softly, because she never gave up. Madame broke down crying again as she looked at the children she once threw out. Now successful, confident, and respectful. She looked at her own situation, her son behind bars because of greed. Life had spoken its truth. Margaret stepped closer to Madame, touched her shoulder gently, and said, I forgave you long ago, not because you asked, but because I needed peace in my heart. Holding anger would have destroyed me, so I let it go. Madame covered her face and wept loudly. Her husband lowered his head in deep shame. Margaret continued, Your son made his choices. I made mine. God saw everything. And today, he has shown all of us the truth. The wind blew softly around them, almost as if the world itself paused to listen. Then Margaret looked at them with calm eyes, not angry, not bitter, just peaceful. You pushed me down, she said, but God lifted me up. That is enough for me. Madame reached out and hugged Margaret's legs, crying uncontrollably. Margaret slowly bent down and hugged her back, not with hatred but with the strength of a woman who survived everything. And right there, in that small doorway, surrounded by tears, truth, and the memory of suffering, Margaret felt something she had been denied for so many years.